Hello, everyone. We are here with another, well, this time not a modern league, but a legacy league, and we are playing Doomsday. So, Doomsday is an infamous combo deck where we are looking to resolve a copy of Doomsday, shrink our library down to 5 cards, and then work our way through that in order to play a Thassa's Oracle. So, I do have some older Doomsday videos on my channel from a couple years ago. And Doomsday is the legacy deck that I would play in paper if I had a legacy tournament tomorrow, but I haven't played that much legacy for a little while, so I was playing some leagues and shaking off some of the rust. And I had a league here that I thought turned out pretty nice. I ended up getting a 5-0 with it, so spoilers, but obviously there's some interest in watching the matches, I would hope. And I'm playing a very turbo version of Doomsday. So a lot of the choices that I've made here, I mean, a lot of this is pretty stock. We're playing Force of Will, Brainstorm, Personal Tutor, but I'm playing sort of the maximum amount of mana that it kind of feels reasonable to. I'm playing the full 4 Lotus Petal, and I'm playing 2 Cabal Ritual. I'm also, well, I could be playing one more land. I am testing the Undercity Sewers. I trimmed down to 7 fetches with 2 basics, 4C, and then the Caverns. Sewers, I think definitely has potential. You're not necessarily going to be using your mana every turn, so a free scry out of your land slot is pretty nice. And in order to make room for some of this main deck extra mana, I've trimmed to 1 main deck Thassa's Oracle, putting the second one in the sideboard. We're playing the full 4 days as a potential way to fight against Bowmasters a little bit better. And in our sideboard is really the only stuff that I would call maybe a little bit of spice. Unearth is a little bit spicy, although it is certainly known Doomsday technology. The idea being that potentially against a Bowmasters deck, we could do something like consider, flip an Oracle, and then Unearth. So minimizing the number of draws we need. Just an idea. It's a little bit more mana efficient than consider, flip a card, Oracle. Besides that, and it can cycle in a pinch too. Besides that, I generally like Tormod's Crypt as like the graveyard nuking artifact of choice. I could definitely see an argument for Nile Spellbomb. I don't like some of the other options as much. I feel like I definitely value the ability to like make a Doomsday pile, cycle into 0 mana interaction though. So against like Reanimator, for example, if you have to do a pass the turn pile but you have 1 cycler, you can make your pile, cycle into Crypt, play the Crypt as like a hate piece to buy you the turn or whatever, and then, well, I guess if you're making a pass to the turn pile to Reanimator, you're probably resilient to discard anyway. But that's not the point. I like being able to play it for 0. It also makes it a little bit easier in lines where you have to be kind of tight on your mana, but you also want to play around Endurance. It's also good with Lion's Eye Diamond hands in that way. So, with that in mind, the rest of this is pretty standard. We have some Shieldreds, we have Force of Negation, a little bit of Bounce, extra discard and Duress. 1 copy of the One Ring. I'm not sure how I feel about it in Doomsday yet. I know generally these slower, like 3 and 4 color lists are playing more of it, but it has seen some play in the straight blue-black lists as well. I kind of wanted to try a copy just to see. I think maybe it has a place, but I'm not, like I said, I am certainly rusty on this, so I wouldn't look at this for a deck list necessarily. This is just me sort of testing some things that I have missed out on a little bit. Okay, with that in mind, we can get into the first round. And this is our round number 1 hand. Now, it has been about a week since I played these matches, so I'm not 100% sure I'm going to remember every decision I made. I think I would have certainly kept this hand. It has some interaction, a bit of sculpting, and the mana that we need to get there. But I may not remember what I'm doing or what my thought process was at the time, but that is one of the benefits of analyzing your replays, especially with a deck like Doomsday, where, we can all sit around and brainstorm better solutions to certain piles that sort of post-mortem analysis is very useful. You know, we can ponder the different options, consider if there were any alternate lines. Okay, I'll stop. Okay, so our opponent leads on Island Go. That could be a lot of things. Can't really put too much of a read based on that. We pick up Undercity Sewers. So the extra land is probably not something that we are super excited about there. We don't necessarily need it. How's this? Okay, so yeah, we play C, and then we can play Ponder. And our Ponder shows us C Petal Daze. So that is a whole lot of nothing that we really need. So if we go ahead and shuffle, then we draw a petal. Again, more mana that we don't need. So now our hand is kind of heavily leaning on this Brainstorm. Our opponent has Tar and Brainstorm. And then they pass. So they could still be a lot of things. We pick up Thassa's Oracle. Not necessarily a card I'm super excited about drawing here. We pick up Personal Tutor, Thoughtseize. Those are both good. Tutor is a way to find Doomsday. Thoughtseize as a little bit of extra interaction. We ship back the Oracle and one of the lands. And then we can go ahead and play the Personal Tutor, getting this Doomsday. Now, what we are setting ourselves up for, so the thought process in playing the Personal Tutor over the Thoughtseize is that if our opponent cantrips again, you know, maybe if we Thoughtseize them now, and they're a Force of Will deck, we don't see the Force of Will, but then they cantrip again, they play a Ponder, and then they find a Force of Will. Whereas next turn, we have the option of playing Swamp, Petal, Thoughtseize our opponent. So, yeah, we can Thoughtseize them. We still have 3 mana left over for the Doomsday that we're going to draw off of this Personal Tutor. And then we can edge LED and kill them on the same turn if the coast is clear with this Thoughtseize. And if the coast isn't clear, then we can build a pile that is going to beat whatever it is that they have. Meanwhile, again, if we Thoughtseize now, we Personal Tutor next turn, we'd have to like burn an edge in order to get to the Doomsday. I think that is definitely a lot worse. So we put Doomsday on top. Our opponent is going to fetch a Volcanic Island. They play a Lotus Petal, revealing that they are almost certainly Sneak and Show, and then the Ancient Tomb confirms it. And they go for a Show and Tell. So we can't necessarily stop this. Hopefully it's not an Omniscience. We put our Swamp into play. It's an Atraxa. So could be better, could be worse. They reveal a Force of Will, in addition to some cantrips and some more mana. So they will at least have a Force. And they're pondering again, and they shuffle, which is a good sign. Because probably the only thing they're really looking at this the only thing they're really looking for at this point is more forces. And we draw the Doomsday that we knew was on top. And so we can lead on the Thoughtseize. And we see that they have double Force, which is definitely a little bit rough. So we can take a Force, but now we have to pass the turn. They ponder again. And really our best draw at this point is another discard spell. They go for another Show and Tell. They do put a Petal in, there's really kind of no reason not to. And they hit actually kind of a bad Atraxa on this second set. You know, they reveal Emrakul, but beyond that, I mean, a bunch of lands, a Sneak Attack, a Ponder, no more interaction, which is good. So it is still just the one Force that we have to beat. And they play another Ponder, where they shuffle. They're going to hit us for 7, and then pass the turn. They're going to go to discard, get rid of one of the lands. We pick up Underground Sea, which is definitely not great. Because we can't get through their Force. In theory, we do have another turn here. But I do go for the Doomsday. Why did I go for the Doomsday here? Oh yeah, because they have Sneak Attack Emrakul in hand. So I need to go for the Doomsday here. So they go for the Force. We pass. We'll make them play it, but we're dead here. So they play the Sneak Attack. And we concede. So we lose round number 1 here. We were in definitely a strong position to win here. It's just that they had double force. And I mean, that's not so unlikely after they got an Atraxa into play. So we can't really complain too much. But we did have a pretty powerful hand that would have definitely beaten a lot of other draws. Okay, so on to game number 2. So I definitely like our game number 2 hand, a pretty decent amount. We have a Force plus blue card. We have a Duress. We have a couple lands. And we have cantrips to sculpt. So we're going to lead on one of these cantrips, in particular a Ponder. We find both Doomsday, Personal Tutor, and another land. So if we keep the Doomsday plus the land, we kind of don't need the Personal Tutor, which is card disadvantage. And we can shuffle next turn in a way that means that we don't need this Personal Tutor. Our opponent leads on Scalding Tarn. We go to our turn. And we have some interesting choices here. For example, do we play Undercity Sewers? We do, because we want the ability of playing the turn 3 Doomsday. And we can scry away the Personal Tutor before using one of our cantrips, and probably the Ponder, in order to make it a little bit better. We do also have the option here of playing the Duress, which means we can potentially pave the way for Doomsday next turn when we otherwise wouldn't be able to. A nice benefit of playing the Duress here as well is that we can use this Ponder to pitch to Force and then have Brainstorm to dig into our pile, plus an extra card in whatever we draw next turn. Our opponent brainstorms in response. And then they show us a hand with 4 Sneak, 3 Fatties, and 2 Volcanic Islands. So I'm guessing that they probably hid maybe a cantrip or maybe a Show and Tell on top. So Show and Tell would be the blue card for their Force, although they do also have Atraxa. Sneak Attack, they can't really get it into play next turn, so I'm not super worried about that because they can't have like both Tomb and Petal. So we're just kind of in the clear to take this Doomsday. We know they can't have more than one piece of interaction next turn if they hit a piece of interaction on the top. So our Doomsday should just cleanly resolve next turn. They play a Volcanic Island, and then they pass the turn. I think. Well, yeah, there we go. There we go. No? Alright, yeah. Okay. So, again, we're just in the clear to resolve a Doomsday here. We draw Thassa's Oracle. So we did board in our other Thassa's Oracle. So I feel relatively okay about potentially, pitching this to a Force or something if we need to. Because we'll just be fine anyway. And so we just go for the Doomsday. It resolves. And we're just looking to set up a pile that wins next turn. So we know we have an extra mana. It's not like they are going to be able to kill us on their turn when they have 1. They will have 2 unknown cards, but none of the cards in their hand do anything, right? So even if they had like Ancient Tomb and they played a Sneak Attack, they still can't use it. And even if they had Ancient Tomb and they tried to play a Sneak Attack, we would Force of Will it. They have 1 unknown card. Now maybe they had Sneak Attack and Force of Will on top, and then they would like be able to shut down our draw, but then what is their follow-up plan? So basically where I'm going with this is we can basically do a double draw pile where, actually we don't even need a double draw pile. I shouldn't have, yeah, I'm switching it around. Because we have the Oracle in our hand. So I do set it up like this in case maybe for some reason I need to play a second Oracle. But we have a double draw pile where we're going to use the Brainstorm and then the Cyclers to work our way to Cavern Oracle. They play Show and Tell, so we can just kind of pretty cleanly force this. It's also worth noting that when we saw their hand, we saw, oh no, we did see 2 volcanics, and they had a trop in play already. So there's one thing that they don't know, so they could still have a force of will, or something like that. But if they did, I mean, are we really in bad shape? Kind of no, because what I set up here is that we do already have the Oracle in hand, so if they counter our Brainstorm, they turn us from a double draw pile down to a single draw pile, but I put the Cavern of Souls above the Oracle, so we can cycle down to the Cavern and still have the Oracle in our hand. So we kind of just cleanly cycle through with our cyclers. Our Brainstorm does resolve. They are tapped out, so it's not like they could have like a Pyroblast or something like that. And then we go for Oracle, and we pick up game number 2. So in the third here, we kind of continue with our pattern. We took out our Dazes because they do a decent job of playing around Daze with their fast mana, Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petals, and whatnot. We also take out a little bit of, stuff that we can trim. A Cabal Ritual, a Personal Tutor, a Ponder, in order to bring in more interaction. We do bring in the Force of Negations that can potentially shut down their combo, while allowing us to use our Force of Wills to defend our combo. Our opening 7 had just a bunch of mana. It did have some discard spells, but it had no cantrips and no real way to find a Doomsday, so I was not as confident in this. This I do like a lot better. We have Doomsday Ritual. I put back one of the Doomsdays, and I think I made a little bit of a mistake here. And oh wait, no. What did I do? Okay, so they have a turn 1 show and tell. I think maybe in hindsight I shouldn't have put that Doomsday back, and maybe I should have put back a Brainstorm, because this hand is jamming on turn 1, right? And if they have, well, I guess maybe I could have played a slower sculpting game depending on what they did. I was thinking this hand jams on turn 1, but it doesn't have to. So we will put one of our lands into play. They put an Emrakul into play, so they have a turn 1 Emrakul. We Brainstorm, because why not? The land is in play, and we don't need 2 Brainstorms. We draw actually some pretty decent cards. The Street Wraith, so we have the Force of Will in case we need it to make the Doomsday resolve. We are going to take a hit here, though, but we do have the Street Wraith, which is even better. So we kind of have the absolute perfects here. Well, no, it's slightly off. The problem here is if I have a land, I writ Doomsday, I have 1 mana left over. And if I have to defend it with Force Brainstorm, I only have the Street Wraith in hand, and I have 1 mana up. And we currently don't have a pile in our deck that wins from that spot. If we had an extra card in hand, then we could build a Brainstorm pile, but we don't. If we had a Deep Analysis, we could build a Deep Analysis pile, but we don't. So that's a slightly rough thing. It means that this Force of Will isn't a real Force of Will. But I still absolutely have to go for it here anyway, because otherwise I'm just going to die to this Emrakul. And they only have 3 cards in hand, so they're not that likely to have one. So we Ritual Doomsday, and it does resolve. So now we're in pretty good shape. We do have a potential double draw. We have a lot of different options. We can do something with Lion's Eye Diamond, and I do just kind of make a double draw Lion's Eye Diamond pile. Oracle on the bottom. We Brainstorm. Put a couple cards back. Diamond, Cycler, Cycle, 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 and then we've got Thassa's Oracle. 0 cards in hand, 0 cards in deck, 0 cards in play, 1 extra mana, but hopefully you'll forgive us, or forgive me. I don't know why I said us. Alright, yeah, so we pick up a pretty nice assisted turn 1 against Show and Tell, where the lands that they put into play for us actually did end up mattering. So that was round number 1, and let's go into the second. And our hand here in the second round is quite good. We have a Doomsday, we have a Thoughtseize as a little bit of interaction, and we have some cantrips to try to find some fast mana, or maybe a little bit more protection as needed. So we did lose the die roll, so our opponent is up first, and they lead on a Swamp. Dark Ritual, Opposition Agent. So that's pretty bad. That is pretty bad. We have no answer to that in the main deck. And I think about just conceding right there. But I do figure, okay, let me try to make my opponent think that we are playing like Delver or something like that. So I play a Scalding Tarn. Our opponent plays Vault of Whispers, Chalice 1. And here I'm going to scoop it up. And hopefully playing the Scalding Tarn, if we just immediately scoop to Opposition Agent, we look more like Doomsday. If we play Tarn, maybe they think that we're like Delver looking for a Bolt or something like that, or maybe we're looking for a Volcanic and then we can bolt it and then play a game. So we're looking to try to bluff a little bit. We draw the Polluted Delta, and I don't really want to show them any more. Again, Scalding Tarn, probably they're not necessarily reading this as Doomsday, and by conceding more to the Chalice than the Opposition Agent, it looks a little bit less like Doomsday, I think. So definitely an interesting thing, in a situation where you're dead lost, trying to make it look like you're maybe playing something else. There could definitely be an argument to be played for revealing absolutely nothing, but that would kind of require scooping to the Opposition Agent outright, and the fact that I scoop to an Opposition Agent does give them information about the deck I'm playing. Okay, so second game, let's not get turn 1'd, yeah? Okay, so I mean, I already told you guys it was a 5-0, so you know it we don't get turn 1'd. Or maybe we do when we fight through it. We have Force Negation here. So if you look at how I boarded out the Ponders, figuring I want a little bit of speed. And against a Stompy deck, maybe cutting the Cantrip. I cut some of the Thoughtseizes as well. We bring in Force Negation. I know it doesn't hit Opposition Agent itself, but it does free up the ability to hit Opposition Agent with maybe another card. If I can like force the Ponder, or honestly even forcing whatever else they're Dark Ritualing out. Because if they're playing Dark Ritual, they're not just playing Opposition Agent. Maybe they're playing, and they play Ancient Tomb, and they go for a, what do they go for? Yeah, Chalice. So here we can Brainstorm, and I kind of like all the cards in my hand, so I don't mind just sort of using this Brainstorm in a slightly less than fully efficient way, and then that way we can daze this. And we have Force, Brainstorm. We have mana. We're going to play the fetch land here and fetch a Surveil land. I'm holding this Brainstorm in hand as blue card fodder, potentially. They go Chrome Mox, Agadeem, 4 mana. And they play a Leyline. So they're playing Helm. It's like a black stompy Helm, Leyline, prison deck. We fetch the Sewers. There's no reason to fetch in response to the Leyline. I don't care if this card is in my graveyard. It's not like I'm playing like Murktide or Dragon's Rage Channeler or something. And as soon as I fetch the Underground Sewers, they know I'm not playing Delver. So Underground or Scalding Tarn is not necessarily something I need. So we get rid of that. And then we can play an Underground Sea. We play the Petals here so that we can hold up double Force. We will hard cast this Force of Negation if needed. Playing the Petal basically means I get to pitch Petal to Force, which is something I would be very happy to do at the moment. So our opponent pays 4 mana, fetches, and then plays a Helm. We're certainly going to counter this. They only have 1 card left, but we do need to draw a Doomsday at some point. If we're not going to draw Doomsday, though, second Force of Negation is pretty good, because now I just have 3 lands, and again, I'm holding up double Force. They play Mox. And then they go for a Beseech. So I do end up forcing the Beseech. So there definitely could be an argument to be made for waiting till the Beseech resolves, and then forcing whatever they get. However, if they potentially get some sort of thing that has, I can't really think of what would have an uncounterability clause or something like that, but I do end up deciding to just force the Beseech and not risk anything there. I could have maybe looked up their deck list to be a little bit more familiar, but I don't know. So here I do go for the Brainstorm, figuring I will hit another blue card, and we find ourselves Brainstorm locked, which is not really where we want to be. This turn I don't get to hold up Ritual Force, but I will soon next turn get to hold up Ritual Force. And I play this Petal and then do have that. So again, I don't necessarily need to burn a blue card to play my Force. We play another Leyline, that really doesn't matter. They're getting down to pretty low life with this Ancient Tomb. They're on 6. We consider away this Cabal Ritual, and we do hit the Doomsday. Now we have Swamp. We go for the Doomsday. I don't play the Dark Ritual just because there's kind of really no need. Potentially I can Brainstorm it back if I end up needing to in a Brainstorm pile. So here, our pile, hang on. I missed the last card. I think it was a second Oracle. Was it a second Oracle? I don't remember what I put there. Sorry, I clicked a little bit fast. But the rest of this, and we have Brainstorm, we have Street Wraith. Brainstorm will let us put back the... Actually, no, I think what I... No. Because I don't want to make a Petal hand because I don't want to get rid of these Force of Wills. So I think the way I stack this is Street Wraith, then Brainstorm draws my remaining 3 cards, and then I can hardcast Oracle. So I think I actually... No, I wouldn't have put a Cavern. Cavern should be boarded out. Yeah, it is. And yeah, so the key thing is that I'll next turn go Street Wraith, Brainstorm, and be able to put this Dark Ritual back. Street Wraith, Brainstorm, and our opponent scoops. So we have this Force, and I set up a pile that just keeps Force Pitch Force up the entire time. So if they had some sort of interaction, then we just get them. So we are on to game number 3. And our game number 3 hand here, I think, is again decent. We have some counter magic. In fact, we have Force Daze. We have 2 of our 3 black mana for Doomsday, and we have an Echoing Truth, potentially, if we need something like that. If not, it can be food for one of these forces. We pick up another Daze. We play the Petal out. Not sure why I did that. Oh, if they like Chalice 0, potentially then I may not need to counter a Chalice 0. And they go for a turn 2. Chalice 1. So we're going to go ahead and Daze this. It does mean that if I draw a land next turn, I can't Doomsday right away, but I do have so much interaction in hand that that's not something I'm super concerned about. I hold this diamond because I don't need it to play the Doomsday, and I may want to put it back to a Brainstorm or something like that. Our opponent plays another land and passes. We have Petal, and then we can Doomsday. Our opponent is telegraphing Opposition Agent, and we will counter the Opposition Agent if they play it. They do, and then we go for a Daze. We have an interesting decision here, because now we do have the ability to counter some sort of hate piece, but the pile that we would be able to build to win is probably going to be a Lion's Eye Diamond pile. However, what I end up going with here is actually a pile that doesn't necessarily need Lion's Eye Diamond. Their deck is not very likely to have removal, so if we put Street Wraith on top, Brainstorm under that, and then so we draw for turn, it's Street Wraith. We Street Wraith into the Brainstorm. We play our land, we Brainstorm, we draw Oracle, 2 Petals. We put 2 cards back, so we can put back Lion's Eye Diamond, Echoing Truth, and then we can play the Thassa's Oracle off of the 2 Petals. So the idea here is that we can again keep up Force Pitch Force through our entire combo if we don't need to use it on something on their turn. So while it doesn't clear the deck, I think the fact that they're not very likely to be able to kill the Oracle. And this does mean that we just get to hold up protection the entire time. They play a Swamp, Bloodstained into a Swamp. Now, Chalice is something we actually have to force here, because it will kill us if it resolves, because we can't play those Petals, and we don't have a second mana source to be able to play the Echoing Truth. So had they maybe 2 pieces of hate, they could certainly have gotten us here, but they had just Chalice and then Helm. And that means we get to win. Put those back, play the petals, crack them, Oracle, 2 left in the deck, and the game has ended. So we pick up a nice win over Black Helm. All right, on to round number 3. So this time we win the die roll in round number 3, and we open with an unkeepable 7 because we do not have a land. Our 6 is a little bit better. We do have a land. We can ship this Oracle. We do have the 3 black for Doomsday secured. We have Thoughtseize for a little bit of interaction, and we have a couple cantrips which will hopefully let us find said Doomsday. Our opponent passes. Oh wait, no, we were on the first turn. Oh yeah, so I accidentally clicked through my first turn. So we're off to a great start. Our opponent plays an Urza's Saga and then passes. Pick up a Lion's Eye Diamond, which we don't necessarily need, but then we do find a Doomsday, which we definitely keep. I also keep the Cabal Ritual, because that will get me to 4 mana, so I can Ritual, Thoughtseize Doomsday, and sort of capitalize on that Thoughtseize. Our opponent cycles Yorion Revealed. They tick their Saga along, and then they play an Oswald Fiddlebender. Okay. Search your library for an artifact with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana cost and put it on the battlefield. So I'm thinking some sort of like painter type of deck, or maybe like Bomberman, but with Yorion Revealed. So maybe it's like a blue-white something or other. So we play Cabal Ritual, play another Cabal Ritual, Thoughtseize them, and we take, so they are playing, we take their Ponder. They have some lands, and they have Chrome Courier and 2 Intuitions. So I'm certainly reading this as like a Force of Will, blue-white painter or something like that is my guess at the moment. So they could certainly Intuition for 3 forces. However, so I need to build a pile that is going to be able to beat 3 forces. Or sorry, beat a force. So we take Oracle, we take Cavern, because that makes sense. And then we take 3 Cyclers. And basically the situation here is if they get a force, I can play the oh no, I can't play the LED. Do I play the LED this turn? I don't remember. Yeah, so the point is I'm trying to do a double draw pile where maybe they don't force my Brainstorm. Or if they do force my Brainstorm, I put the Cavern on the bottom so that I can still try for it. Now note that I'm playing the LED in the hope that maybe they think that this LED... No, the LED does matter. LED actually... I don't know about this pile in hindsight, because I'm thinking like... Yeah, if I have to Brainstorm, if they kill this LED, I'm actually kind of in a little bit of trouble. They do get a Chrome Mox, which is kind of an interesting choice. And they go for Intuition. They get 3 forces, as predicted, and then they play another Plains. So they have a Force, they have an Island, they have a Chrome Courier, and they have an Intuition. And oh yeah, and then they're going to use their Fiddlebender. So they got the Mox in order to be able to use their Fiddlebender. So they got a 0 mana card in order to be able to go get a 0 mana card. And then they get Portable Hole, killing my Lion's Eye Diamond. That's a little bit rough. Yeah, I think in hindsight, I maybe should have done that a little bit differently. I cycle here. I Brainstorm. And they force it. And I'm relatively okay with this because we couldn't have won that turn anyway. And so now I just have double draw into Cavern Oracle next turn. Note that they did pitch an Intuition to the Chrome Mox. They just used their Force, and then they pitched a Chrome Courier to that. So they have an Island and 2 Unknowns in hand. play the island, play a Ponder. Ponder doesn't, I mean, if they find a counter spell, it doesn't really matter at this point. They don't shuffle. They're going to hit us with the Fiddlebender. I maybe could have built a better pile there that didn't rely on LED. But I think that maybe that would have exposed me to Force, which I think it was, I guess, more important to play around Force than removal on LED. Draw Street Wraith. So we have Cycle. We have Cycle. And we have Cavern, play Oracle. So even if they had found another Force or something with that Ponder, we still get the game. So our opponent is playing definitely some sort of weird brew, but it is ultimately a Force of Will Urza Saga deck, so it could certainly have the right sort of ingredients to shut us down. Maybe if they get like hate pieces and then the counter spells, it could be annoying. So let's see how the second game goes. So not fully knowing the details of what my opponent is playing, I just kind of trim on a few things, trim a Ponder, trim a Cabalrit, trim a Petal, trim some Dazes, bring in Bounce. Against the Saga deck, I'm expecting some sort of hate permanent that I'm going to have to deal with, so that's the main priority. Fluster also would potentially shut down their like intuitions or their forces. We have a hand here that's pretty reasonable. We have Doomsday, we have 2 out of 3 mana sources. We have a Daze and a Chain as interactive pieces. The Personal Tutor's a little bit useless, but maybe it'll become Force Food or something. They lead on a Mishra's Bauble. Blooded Strand. They bauble themselves, so they're going for the Scry, and then they Ponder. Now it's important to note that our opponent did mulligan to 6 cards. So while so they're on 4 cards after this Ponder. They will be on 5 after they draw from the Bauble on our upkeep. We draw for turn, and we pick up a Cavern of Souls, which is really not what we need as far as lands. And we end up fetching our Undercity Sewers because we want to get this Scry. The Thassa's Oracle is not what we need, so we throw that into the graveyard. We're really looking for a little bit more mana in order to be able to play this Doomsday. However, we're in a bit of a risky spot here because our opponent certainly could have a Force of Will. We don't really have any way of playing around it. So my hope would be that maybe they tap out for something next turn, and then we can defend it with a Daze. They go for Brainstorm. And then they do tap for a Ratchet Rescue Racer. This is offensive. It's a Transformer. The Transformer is in our Magic game. I'm just kind of... I think I would mind it less if the art was better. I feel like the art is not good. But I had to read what this card does because I have no clue what this is. But it doesn't do a whole lot. It's like a clock that brings things back. And then... I don't know. Yeah, it like brings things back. It seems like not a very good card. I don't really know what it's doing in this deck. Maybe they can recur Mishra's Bauble. Okay, so it's kind of like Emery. It's like somewhat like Emery. Maybe this is an actual card. I see its Brothers War Transformers cards. If this is an actual card, I don't even know what this card is. So, not sure. But by actual card, I mean like something that has a different name. So I'm not trying to hate the Universe Beyond stuff too much. All right, but yeah, all right, yeah. So I don't know what this necessarily does, but it could get back Mishra's Bauble. So we go to our turn. Our opponent is now tapped out, so we can take advantage of the opportunity to play a Cabalrit. I accidentally make a black mana with Cavern of Souls. So Cavern of Souls actually being relevant for 1 colorless mana alongside Cabal Ritual is kind of cool. We play a Doomsday. Our opponent forces. We Daze the Force. And then they have second Force. So had they not had second Force there, we have double draw and win with Brainstorm Street Wraith. But they get us. We draw with Street Wraith to try and find Thoughtseize, or to try and find another Force or a Daze, but we don't. And we didn't Street Wraith first because we wanted the ability to double draw into our pile, potentially. I didn't think on 4 cards they would have double Force, but they do. We're going to Surveil, and we find a Dark Ritual, which we do actually kind of have to keep, because we don't have a means of playing our next Doomsday when we find one. Our opponent brings back the Ratchet, and then they go for an Intuition, so that was their draw for turn, and they give us the choice of Diamond, Bauble, Extraction. So I absolutely cannot give them Extraction. And so I think I end up giving them Bauble, because I figure they can already get back a Bauble, so we might as well give them that. Now here they're going for Conversion on their Transformer. Did you get another draw from this Bauble? Maybe an argument could have been made for giving them Diamond, but Diamond does seem to indicate that they are some sort of like blue-white Bomberman. And they hit us with this, but I'm going to go ahead and bounce it, just because I don't want them to start recurring baubles and drawing cards. I know this does cost me the Lotus Petal, but I do kind of need to stop them from drawing cards too. And here I Brainstorm. We find some lands, which is, I mean, it's something. And here I kind of have to Thoughtseize. I could Personal Tutor for Doomsday, but then what am I doing the next turn? So here I can take this Ratchet, and if they drew something scarier, I could have taken that. So they have nothing in hand. Next turn we can potentially Personal Tutor for a Doomsday. But we just draw a Doomsday, so we are a little bit lucky in that sense. And we're building a pile with Oracle. Note that I'm clicking the Oracle in my discard to not necessarily give away information that I'm playing 2 Oracles. We're just building a pile of Cycler's Oracle. We already have the Cavern of Souls. I don't think they're a Wasteland deck, so I don't expect to lose that. And even if they do, they would need something else besides Wasteland to stop us. The scariest thing would be like Pithing Needle. And there's no real... yeah. Okay, so then, but they don't play anything other than a Caracas. They have 1 card in hand. Maybe it's a Force or something like that, but we're just going for it here. We do play the Oracle and pick up the second game. So we beat, I guess it was Blue-White Bomberman, I think. Definitely a bit of a brew. Our opponent is cooking, but a lot of these cards are just good cards, so I mean, good cards can certainly win games. Alright, on to round number 4. So our hand here looks pretty good. We have Thoughtseize, we have a Personal Tutor to get Doomsday, a couple lands, Edge into our pile, Daze for interaction, Brainstorm for sculpting. Our opponent leads on Plains, so basic Plains is always something you love to see when you're playing a combo deck. And then we draw Doomsday, so we don't even need to use our Personal Tutor. We go for a turn 1 Thoughtseize because if we think that this is Death and Taxes, and basic Plains Go probably indicates Death and Taxes, especially with no turn 1 play, the thing I'm most scared about is a turn 2 Thalia, and I would like to stop that. Now, the slight thing here is if I had gotten an island, I could have dazed, but the thing is I don't really want to be playing this Brainstorm on turn 1 because I do want to sort of capitalize on this Brainstorm getting rid of at least Personal Tutor. So I choose to go for the Thoughtseize and then figure I will defend after that with the Daze. Now if they had 2 scary 1-drops, they could have potentially gotten us here, but they did only have 1 Thalia. Oh, and it's also worth mentioning that I further knew that this was Death and Taxes because they revealed a Yorion. So Yorion Plains Go is 1000% Taxes. They have a very slow hand except for this 1 Thalia, which we do take. Now they have 4 drops and 5 drops. I think they have they have Caldra Complete, Batterskull, and Canoptic Scarab Swarm. Alright. So they play a Port, which could be a little bit annoying. It's one of the better draws that they could have had, I guess, because it just slows the game down. So Petal is okay. We play Tarn and pass. We're looking to find a way to sort of reliably cash in this Brainstorm. They again go for port on that. I'm not fetching an island and brainstorming because, again, I would like to make this a perfect brainstorm if possible. And because we drew a... what's it called? Because we drew another land there, we actually don't even need to brainstorm anymore. Because our line now is we can fetch a third land, 3 sources, Doomsday, edge into a Petal, and make a brainstorm pile. So we have extra cards. So we Doomsday, the brainstorm pile, we need a Petal on top of our deck, and then we need Consider, LED, Oracle, and a Cycler. Cycle our edge, draw the Petal, play the brainstorm, put back Consider on top of Tutor, Diamond, Wraith, 3 blue, classic brainstorm pile stuff. Get rid of the Tutor and then play Thassa's Oracle. Alright, so we pick up game number 1 against Taxes. Generally a pretty good matchup, but let's see how game number 2 goes. So for game number 2, if you take a look at our sideboarding, we cut Cavern, we board out some of the discard, and instead we're bringing in some of the bounce. So Chain, Echoing Truth, both things that we're going to want. We also bring in our 1 of Fatal Push. So this hand is just a clean turn 1 kill with Ritual, Doomsday, Petal, Brainstorm. So our opponent leads on Flagstones, Deafening Silence. So we can't kill them on turn 1. How rude. We draw a Ritual, which is kind of a bad draw. We do play the Petal so that it is out and in play. Deafening Silence is not as lethal against Doomsday as it is against some other Storm decks, because we can potentially build a pile of Cyclers and then only cast like 1 spell if we can play a pass the turn pile. So our opponent plays a Spirit of the Labyrinth, which is also very rude. We're brainstorming in response because otherwise we're not really using this brainstorm. And we have yet more mana that we don't need. I keep this Street Wraith to be able to cycle it on my opponent's turn. We're going to fetch and play a Doomsday. And we have an interesting situation here, because we can't just turbo cycle through our pile to beat this Deafening Silence because they have a Spirit of the Labyrinth. So I would need to get some sort of removal for this Spirit. So obviously we need an Oracle. Some cycling might be good. I'm thinking about, okay, well, we get Push, Daze, Fetch, and then Land, and then Oracle. So, you know, they could have like multiple Wastelands plus ports, so I want to ensure our mana is sort of in okay shape. This Street Wraith represents a draw, but I'm expecting sort of a multiple pass the turn here, and I'm figuring I can push this Spirit and then potentially Daze something else. And the way we're setting this up is so that Daze is on top, and then we can cycle into it if we need it. And we have the push below that so that we can push the Spirit. And then we have Oracle to try to win. And if we needed to wait on the land, we could wait on Fetch and then Land as the 4 and 5 cards. I do cycle the Wraith because it's my opponent's turn, so I can draw a card then. Our opponent ports one of our lands. I draw a land, which is not great. I do push the Spirit. I think in hindsight, maybe I actually shouldn't have pushed that Spirit, because it's going to hit us to 1, but we're just drawing Oracle next turn, so the Spirit kind of doesn't matter anymore. Maybe there was something more hateful I should have saved the push for. I do have this Daze, but maybe they have something where they have extra mana left over. They have a Flicker Wisp, which is not really all that scary. So they do go for a port on us, but that means that they tap out, so potentially if they have like a Solitude or something like that, this Oracle is just safe because we can protect it with the Daze. Now note that Deafening Silence is each player can't cast more than one non-creature spell this turn. Thassa's Oracle being a creature means that we can still play our Daze. And then we play Oracle, 2 cards left, and we get there. I think in hindsight, pushing the Spirit was maybe a mistake. I could have just taken the hit, gone to 1, and then kept up an extra layer of protection. But I guess there's also an argument to be made that if I push the Spirit, I shrink the clock. So potentially if I need to pass 2 turns in order to clear the pile, like let's say they just were holding up white mana for Plow or something like that, and maybe I could have lived the 2 turns from 4 life. So maybe it's actually not so clear-cut, and I think there is definitely an argument to be made in favor of pushing it there. But either way, we get there in... Well, let me know what you think. If you have an opinion, definitely feel free to put it in the comments. So that is the 4th round. We are 4-0 in this 5-0, and let's see what is in store for us in the last round. So in round 5, we have a hand I'm not super excited about, given that it's definitely on the very slow side, but it does sort of have all the pieces. It has mana, it has a Doomsday, it has a Thoughtseize, and against a slower, maybe blue deck of some kind, this is definitely something which could get there. So we do end up keeping it, and our opponent goes Delta Island Ponder, and then plays out a Petal. We pick up an island, which is definitely a bad draw for us here. And there we go. So we fetch, and I end up leading on this Thoughtseize. Petal maybe is more indicative of our opponent being a combo deck of some kind, so I do want to stop them before whatever they're doing with that Petal happens. And I'm not really going to be playing this Doomsday before turn 3 anyway, so I don't mind personal tutoring for it next turn. Our opponent shows us a Teferi, Uro, Brainstorm, Petal, Seagate, Restoration, so they are playing a value deck. The Brainstorm sort of represents the scariest card, because, I mean, yes, Teferi turns off our counter magic, but what counter magic do we have in our hand? None. And then the rest of these cards don't really matter all that much. So we take the Brainstorm. Our opponent has Seagate, they play a Petal, and then they go for the Teferi, as kind of as expected. They plus him. And we pick up the natural Doomsday, so that's pretty good. Because that means we don't need to... And maybe we get to draw something relevant next turn without having to spend this personal tutor on it. Our opponent goes for the Uro. They picked up a Trop or a Flooded Strand as their draw for turn. The one card in their hands that we know about at this point is... Wait, no, they played Seagate. No, we don't know the card in their hand. Okay. And soon it'll be 2 cards in their hand because of the Uro trigger. Opponent ticks Teferi up again. We fetch an Undercity Sewers, mill another Underground Sea. We are really flooded this game. Brainstorm is a decent draw. Gives us some way to get into our pile a little bit. But we're just going to go for the Doomsday here. The odds that they have found exactly like Force Blue card or something like that are not very high here. So we can just play C. Why is this not? There we go. Yeah, so we can just play C and then go for the Doomsday. Our opponent tries to maybe fake us out with a fake Petal Sacrifice. And we have the Oracle Cavern in hand already. So we kind of get to make an interesting pile where our life total is not going to be under pressure, so I don't mind taking the Cyclers. And we take Thoughtseize at the bottom of the pile, so we can play like 4 Cyclers, Thoughtseize, and then potentially take out some sort of interaction piece. Actually, do I do put Thoughtseize at the bottom. I think there's an argument to be made for putting Thoughtseize at the top, and then I can Brainstorm into my cyclers. So I think this pile was maybe slightly misbuilt. I should have put the Thoughtseize at the top so I can Thoughtseize right away and potentially play around like an Endurance or something like that a little bit better. Now that being said, we do still have play around Endurance, because if I use my cyclers, I mean, the thing is I will lose my lands. So if they do have, yeah, this pile was not as good at playing around Endurance as it should have been. And they're a green deck, so I mean, maybe there's a chance they have some main deck Endurance. I think it's not that likely, but it's not impossible. Teferi ticks down, so they go for the card draw. And then they go for a Brainstorm. And they go for a Ponder. They shuffle, so that's always a good sign. And they play a Delighted Halfling. Which, I mean, okay. If you're trying to turbo out a Teferi or an Uro or a legendary 3-drop, Delighted Halfling does seem like a cool choice. So we do have this Brainstorm. We can potentially do something with that as far as getting creative in how we're digging into our pile. Street Wraith is kind of just a free roll here. I've already talked about how it should have been Thoughtseize on the top of the pile instead of on the bottom. So we go for the cycle, we sack to edge, cycle, edge, Thoughtseize our opponent, and they concede rather than showing us their hand. So maybe they found a piece of counter magic or something like that, and they just thought we were going to take it, but they know we have 2 blue mana, so we get there. So we win round number 1 in match 5. So as far as what we bring in, we cut some dazes, we cut a little bit of mana in terms of a couple Cabal Rituals, a Petal, because this is a slower control deck. We bring in some of the bounce, because I think they could certainly have hate permanents. In addition, bouncing Teferi might become relevant. We bring in like our Duress as a little bit more discard. I don't really necessarily know that I want the One Ring against the Teferi deck, because while, yes, you do get it back in hand and you could potentially replay it, you probably had to burn a ritual to play it, and I don't know if I'm in love with that. We also bring in the Tormod's Crypt in case our opponent is playing Endurance, and they're probably playing Endurance. Our hand here is decent. We have a Thoughtseize, we have a Brainstorm, so we'll keep. Some of these other cards here are not super exciting, but Truth maybe is going to be relevant. Street Wraith is a way to go into our pile, or at least it's a redraw. And our opponent leads on Ponder, not shuffling. Diamond is, again, could be better, could be worse. We really just need to find a Doomsday, but I am going to lead on this turn 1 Thoughtseize, potentially take it to Teferi or something like that before they get to play it with a Petal. They do have Emrakul, Lorien Revealed, Ponder, Force of Will, so I'm not sure if the Emrakul is like some sort of show and tell sideboard juke, or if that was the plan overall, all along. Maybe because they're playing green, they might be like a Eureka deck. Is Eureka even online? I guess it is. I'm not sure. Alright. Yeah, it must be. Okay, so they Ponder. And they do shuffle. We do end up taking Force of Will. I think, again, we figure... Wait, did I say we take the Teferi? No, we take the Force of Will, because we don't really have any other way to get through the Force of Will. And again, we're not really on a hand that has counter magic that Teferi is going to care about. We do draw a 3rd black source, which is nice. And we're in a position to be able to Brainstorm now. And a perfect Brainstorm with the Tarn. So we Brainstorm, we pick up some nice cards, and then we send away the Oracle. And what was the other card I sent away? I somehow missed it. Oh, the Lion's Eye Diamond, yeah. So the key thing is we're just looking to resolve the Doomsday if possible. We can Ponder here, and again, keep looking for a Doomsday. I do take the Thoughtseize. I guess I figure I have other counter magic, and this does sort of, it gives me a little bit more protection. The Dark Rip means I can potentially go for a same turn win. I'm not sure if I love that keep in hindsight. I think maybe it's would have been worth trying to find the Doomsday a little bit more aggressively. So they go for a Teferi. We force pitch Echoing Truth because if we let this Teferi resolve, obviously we cannot play our force. So that kind of just has to happen. I think I was thinking that maybe they find another counterspell, so I might want this Thoughtseize. But I think in hindsight, maybe I had to be a little bit more aggressive there. So we Thoughtseize. That went way too fast. They have Force of Negation, One Ring, Emrakul, and then we take a Brainstorm because that is their only blue card. And I'm kind of relying on maybe them not being able to play this Force of Negation by not having a blue card. We Brainstorm, again we don't find again we don't find Doomsday. Consider away one of these Dark Rits, so that helps us get through our Brainstorm pile. Now we are drawing blind next turn. And our opponent plays, they draw land for turn, they play the One Ring, so they have 2 cards in hand, Force, Emrakul, soon to be 3 with whatever they just draw. And we do hit the Doomsday, so we actually can win here, because we have Ritual Doomsday, a bunch of mana, and Street Wraith. So we can kind of work our way through our deck. And the question just comes down to, did our opponent draw a blue card with this One Ring draw? So they have 1 unknown card. We go for it. And they did draw a blue card. They drew a Show and Tell. So, I mean, once we saw the Emrakul, we know they're playing Show and Tells. So that's not necessarily new information. But I think it was very reasonable to go for it there. Our opponent draws a Carpet. They draw more cards with their One Ring. They ponder. Now things are just looking bad for us. We do draw another Doomsday. So we can go for a Doomsday again. I mean, Runner, Doomsday is definitely a reasonable try. We're in slightly rough shape here because we can't win this turn, because we can't make a pile that wins off of 1 mana, no cards in hand. Our opponent has Hedge Maze, and then this Doomsday does resolve, but we do have to make a pass the turn pile. So we go with, oh man, that was way too fast. We took a Thoughtseize, we took Oracle. I think I took our Brainstorm in there. The goal being, I'm not sure what I did. I clicked way too fast through that. It's my bad. Let's see what I did. So they draw some cards with the One Ring. They make some more mana. They have approximately 1 million cards in hand. They have a Brainstorm. And while yes, I could build a double Cycler pile, I don't necessarily want to lose to something like Endurance. So if I recall correctly, I think I tried to build a pile that with Thoughtseize on top where I can try to beat either Counterspell or Endurance. Something like Dress Down would still get us. We lead on Thoughtseize. Our opponent has Veil of Summer. They have 2 cards left in hand, and then they draw a card. So now they have 3 cards. Okay. So now we cycle. We pick up a Brainstorm. They have another Veil of Summer, so they're cycling another Veil, trying to find a piece of counter magic. And they do find Force of Will. So they did draw a lot of cards, seal a lot of cards, so it is pretty reasonable that they would have found a force there. But we nearly beat them. We nearly had this after multiple forces, drawing the blue card for the force. So it was overall 3 forces, 2 veils. Yeah, 3 forces, 2 veils, and I guess a Teferi kind of counted because it ate one of our forces. So we almost got there. But we'll have to go to game number 3. Okay, so again, we sort of keep our sideboarding plan as what it was. We cut a couple more dazes, and we do end up bringing in the Shieldreds. I think... Not sure. Oh, I was thinking that potentially I show in a Shieldred, like if they show and tell. I don't know if that's really any good in hindsight. I think it's probably not. I think I was like debating whether I was putting them in, and then the sideboarding ended when or like before I had the opportunity to switch back. We do just have a turn 1 here, turn 1 Ritual Doomsday. So, I mean, well, let's roll the dice. And they have the Force. So, and we did trade 2 cards for 2 cards, so it's not the absolute worst. I know we do have this Duress. So I think there's an argument that could have been made for waiting and duressing. Without a second land, I don't know how much I love that necessarily. We do pick up another Doomsday, so we are blessed. And I do shuffle. There was like Preordains, but no second land. Shieldred is not a good draw there. Our opponent plays a Brainstorm. More mana, another Carpet. They've got all of the mana they could ever want. We pick up a land, which is decent. We duress them, so they have Emrakul, Delta, Show. So, I mean, we definitely take this Show, and then their hand kind of isn't doing anything. We can potentially end step Consider, or we can potentially fetch our Surveil land, depending on what they do. They play a One Ring, so now we are definitely under the gun a little bit. I mean, Shieldred can potentially shut down a One Ring, but Shieldred is also a little bit vulnerable, so they do get to still kind of draw into it at least like 1 turn or so. See another Shieldred on top, and that is not a thing that we need. We draw a Street Wraith. So we cycle the Street Wraith because we kind of have nothing going on. We need to. We end up picking up Dark Ritual. And here we go for the Dark Ritual. And we could play Shieldred, but I think if the Shieldred... if something is going to resolve here, I would rather the Doomsday resolve than the Shieldred resolve. Because if the Doomsday resolves, I'm in a position where I can pretty much win next turn. It's not like they have me under life total pressure, and hopefully we can set something up with the number of cards that they draw. It doesn't really matter as much. We go for the Doomsday. And so we're thinking about Cavern, obviously. We have Oracle in hand, thinking about a Cycler. And I make a Cyclers and Cavern pile, with the idea that we're just going to cycle down and then we're going to play our Oracle. So if they have counter magic, doesn't matter. And I think my plan was if they had an Endurance... what was my plan? Maybe my plan was... Oh yeah, my plan was if they have an Endurance, I think it was to use this Consider now, draw, and then have another Cycler after, maybe? I don't quite remember what I was thinking here. Opponent goes for a Hardcast Lorien Revealed. They go for a Brainstorm. But, I mean, we currently have a pile that beats any form of counter magic. We do lose to a Dress Down, potentially, depending on when they play it. They do have 2 mana up. We do go for the Consider, just to draw a card. I do mill that Edge, I'm not... Yeah, I think this pile was not the best. Okay. And again, I think that was also a mistake. Oh wait, no, I do need to get to the Cavern in order to play around Oracle, or to play around counters. So here I do have Oracle. I have the Edge left over in hand, and if they do have Endurance... Actually, no, this probably can beat Endurance. So the idea being that if they reshuffle me now, I wait for that to happen, I Edge, I draw a card. 4 out of my 5 cards can be played, and then basically I just need Doomsday to be either something I see with Consider, or in the bottom 2 of this stack of 5 that would get reshuffled. So there's a 40% of it being in the bottom 2. I could do the math on consider milling it, but that would have to be higher. So I think overall, this pile has a decent chance of beating Oracle anyway. It obviously beats all the counter magic. So I think maybe there could have been an improvement on that, although I'd have to sit and think about it a little bit more in order to see if I can come up with one. Alright, but our opponent didn't seem to have an endurance, and if they had counter magic, it didn't matter. And we pick up game number 3 for the 5-0 with Turbo Doomsday. Let's take a look at the deck one more time and get some closing thoughts. So I feel like I didn't necessarily play against the toughest matchup spread this league necessarily. I mean, we didn't face Delver, we didn't play against any Bowmasters decks other than possibly the Helm deck, which didn't end up having it. No, there was some hateful stuff. You know, the turn 1 opposition agent is pretty helpful. A couple of blue decks. Overall, I was, reasonably happy with how this deck performed and how things went. I feel like, I have somewhat shaken the rust off, and I mean, I'm still interested in sort of testing a couple different pieces here, tweaking things a little bit, but I'll definitely be doing some more Doomsday in the future, but alongside all of my modern content as well. So we'll be bouncing back and forth. I'm not necessarily sure what's up next. I do kind of maybe want to try something with Radstorm, so I'm recording this like the day before Fallout comes out, and Radstorm with like some of the cards that give up poison counter seems like an interesting brew. But I also do want to play a little bit more Twiddle at some point. I mean, it did. I did say in my mill video, my last video, that I thought it was not in the best spot, but I do still want to play it. I think it could still be okay. I'd want to play more mill. I want to play more Doomsday. I want to play more Storm. Really all of my decks. I'm just kind of like, I almost have too many to keep cycling through. The other thing I want to do as far as Legacy at some point, I'll probably play a TES League at some point. So if you're interested in Legacy that isn't Doomsday, stay tuned for that. I don't know how soon. That might be a little bit further out, though. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and if you sat through it all the way until this point, especially thanks to you for maybe really watching all the way till the end. Definitely feel free to like, subscribe, whatever, all that good stuff. That just helps me out, and it'll give you a notification of when I post something new. Currently, I'm in a spot where I'm trying to post about once a week or so. If I can ramp that up a little bit to maybe like a little more often than once a week, I might. No promises, but I'm definitely picking up the pace from where I was, where it was maybe once a month or so. Definitely enjoying a lot of the decks right now, and looking forward to continuing to play some combo decks. So until next time, keep casting Thassa's Oracle in every single format that it's legal in, and keep doing degenerate stuff. Alright, you're the best. Take care.